Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me this afternoon. My name is Kristen Blow, and I'm a board certified behavior analyst. Today, I will be talking with you guys about diet expansion. I'm going to give everybody a couple of minutes to log in. Just so you guys know that throughout this, questions are more than welcome. If I am going too fast or you need me to repeat something, please feel free to let me know. So today we're going to talk about diet expansion. Sometimes we may be dealing with our own children, or maybe children that we work with who have a self-limited diet or maybe kind of picky eaters. So we're going to talk about what could be some of the causes of them being picky eaters or self-limiting their diets, and what are some ways that we can work through these problems. So we will go through a slideshow, and again, if there are any questions, please feel free to ask. Okay, so we're going to talk about diet expansion, and this is more for just making sure that our kids can eat all the foods that they need to make sure they're getting the nutrition that they need. If we want them to be able to try new foods and kind of decrease the sensitivity they may have to some foods. So we'll talk about all of those things. And when you're looking at a picky eater or somebody with a self-limited diet, the first thing that you're always going to want to do is try to rule out any medical causes for this. So what are some things that could be causing your child not to eat? There are multiple different things that could be doing this. They could be suffering from dysphasia, which causes swallowing issues. They could have issues with chewing. They could have a hypersensitive gag reflex. They could have malabsorption disorder, leaky gut syndrome, or avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. And we're going to go over all of these different things and talk about kind of what they are and how they can affect your child. So dysphagia can create a delay in the swallowing process in either your throat or the pharynx, which is the digestive tube between the esophagus and the mouth. And that might also make it hard for you to swallow without coughing or choking. So if you notice that your child, every time they eat, they might be choking or coughing, or maybe they seem to have a fear of eating because they're afraid of choking or coughing, this might be caused by dysphagia. And this is something that you can talk to your doctor about. If this is something that your child is suffering from, they may go ahead and refer you to a speech therapist or an occupational therapist to try to find ways to work around this and work through this and strengthen those muscles. It might be that you have to look at the different foods that you're feeding them, and you might have to adjust what they're eating for the time being. So these are different things that you would want to talk to your doctor about if you're noticing them. There could be chewing issues, and you would know this because your child might complain of pain when they're chewing. If they have lockjaw, you might notice that. You might notice that the food stays in their mouth. Sometimes we have kids who, when they eat, they keep the food right here in their cheek. Or you might have a child whose food is constantly falling out of their mouth. So even as they're eating, it just seems like the food is never going down. It's just constantly falling out. So these are all issues where we would look at motor skills and motor issues and see if there's anything going on with their mouth, with their jaw muscles, make sure that everything is growing and developing the way that it should. Because if not, then those could be some causes of why they're having some issues with food. There are children who have hypersensitive gag reflexes, and that's a condition where the soft tissues at the back and roof of the mouth are overly sensitive to touch. So every time they're putting food back there or a fork back there, you're noticing that they're gagging and maybe starting to choke because that area of the mouth is so sensitive that every time they touch it with anything, they are starting to gag and to choke because it doesn't feel okay. It can't go down the way that it should. So again, if you are noticing any of these things, you want to make sure that you are going to their doctor and asking questions to make sure that there is nothing serious that might be going on. Next, we're going to talk about malabsorption disorder. So this is a disorder that occurs when people are unable to absorb nutrients from their diets, such as carbs, fats, minerals, proteins, or vitamins. This is the same as like celiac disease. That's a very common one, or lactose intolerance, where your body is just not able to break down those different vitamins that are coming in, and your body needs these nutrients to be able to function properly. So if you notice that every time your child is eating a certain type of food, afterward they're having some issues, then you might want to talk to your doctor. Some of the symptoms that can be related to malabsorption disorder are bloating and stomach distension, diarrhea, fatigue, gas. Their stool might be pale or might appear greasy in texture, stomach cramps and weakness. If they're constantly feeling nauseous, these are different things that you're going to want to look out for, because it could be that they are just not able to absorb the nutrients that they were just given, and so it's causing them some kind of pain or uncomfortableness. Another one is leaky gut syndrome. This is not a medically diagnosable syndrome. There are actually still a lot of questions out there about this, but it has a lot of the symptoms of other digestive disorders, and it's believed to be caused by increased intestine permeability. So that basically means that in the tight areas in the gut where it controls what passes through the lining of the small intestine, they don't work properly. So it could be letting those substances into the bloodstream, which could be causing some issues. So again, even though this isn't medically diagnosable yet, this is a thing that is common in many children. So it is something worth mentioning, worth getting looked at if you are feeling like this might be something that your child is suffering from. Another one is called avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, and this is an eating disorder. It is not like anorexia or bulimia, however, because it does not actually deal with the way that you feel about your body. This actually is something that appears often in infancy to early childhood, and it can continue into adulthood, but it includes the lack of interest in food or poor appetite, fears about consequences of eating. And again, this isn't fears of gaining too much weight if they eat or anything like that. This is that they're afraid that they're going to choke, they're going to throw up, they might be allergic to something. So they have these real fears surrounding food, and selective picky eating. So they will only eat certain foods. So they have basically self-limited their diet to where they will only eat these specific things that they feel comfortable eating, because they are suffering from these different fears that they're having about food. So if something like that is happening and you notice that your child is having a true fear when it comes to food, that is definitely something that you would like to talk to your doctor about. If this continues on into their preteens and early adulthood, you could see them start to suffer from malnutrition. You could see some times that they might get early osteoporosis because they're not getting the nutrition that they need, the nutrients they need for their bone development. So these are things that you really want to look into if you're seeing this. Again, sometimes your child is just a picky eater. So it's not that we should be concerned every time that we see a child who does not like certain foods or who refuses to eat certain foods. But if you see that this is a pattern of behavior when you eat or when food is presented, that is when you're going to want to go to a doctor and let them know that this is what you're seeing. I would keep a paper trail on it. I would take notes on when this is happening, the different foods that are presented, because you might find that there is a specific type of food. You might find that they have an allergy. It just depends. Especially in our younger kids, if they do have an allergy to food, a lot of times they don't know how to communicate what that feeling is of an allergy if it does not present on their skin. So if they're not getting hives and they're not swelling, and they're not itchy on the arms, but maybe their throat itches or maybe the inside of their mouth is itching, they may not know how to verbally express that. So we may not know that they're actually suffering from an allergy because we can't see it and they can't tell us. So again, if you are noticing that your child has some very specific behaviors when eating, if they look anything like any of these things and you feel like you're concerned, it never hurts to just go ahead and ask your doctor and just see if maybe there is a medical reason behind why food is such an issue for them. So some other things that can influence the way your child eats if there are no medical causes, we can look at the biological determinants such as hunger, appetite, and taste. If your child is not hungry, they are probably not going to eat. If they are presented with the same thing every single day, they may become oversatiated and they may not want this item anymore. So it seems that they're refusing food when in actuality, it's just that specific meal or maybe that specific item that they just don't want to have anymore. When we look at taste, that's where we're going to look at our sensory part. For taste, we're looking at all different sensory issues. So it could be that they don't like the way a food tastes, but it could also be the way that it smells, the way that it looks in appearance, the texture. So we want to take all of these things into account. I know I am someone who like Jell-O. I don't like anything with like a gelatin consistency because I don't like the texture of those kind of foods. So if you notice that your child maybe doesn't like crunchy foods, my son didn't eat crunchy foods for a long time because his teeth were sensitive and he didn't like the way it felt. So we need to look at all these different things. Sometimes if a food has a very strong smell, it's very hard for a child to want to eat it or taste it because they can't get past the smell of it. So if you have a child who is very sensitive with sensory, if they have very serious sensory sensitivities, then you're going to want to look at all aspects of the meal that you're presenting and try to figure out what it might be that's causing the behavior at that time. We can look at economic determinants such as cost, income, and availability. We do know that everybody does not have the same income. Certain foods can cost more to keep in the home than others. Food is not always available in all homes, or different types of food are not always available. So we need to look at that as well. There are physical determinants such as access, education, skills, the time to cook, can they cook, what is available for you to cook. These are all things that we want to look at. The social determinants such as culture, family, peers, and meal patterns, especially if your child goes to school. You might have some kids who refuse to eat at school because the school meals are presented much differently than their meals at home. You have kids who will not eat specific things when they're in other areas because culturally maybe they're not allowed these specific food items. It depends on how your family eats. How do your parents eat, the ones around you? If you are a person who loves to eat pizza and burgers and hot dogs and you never eat salads or vegetables or fruits, it's going to be really hard to get your child to eat these foods when you never eat them. So our kids are always paying attention to what we're doing and what we're eating. So sometimes we might have to look at that aspect. I love junk food, but after I had my son, I did realize that I had to start incorporating more healthy foods into my own diet, because if I'm not showing him to eat them and I'm not having them available for him, he's probably never going to try them. We want to look at psychological determinants such as mood, stress, and guilt, especially in our older eaters. Sometimes we might have some body dysmorphia that you want to look at. Some people are stress eaters where they will overeat when they're stressed. Some people undereat when they're stressed. Some people eat a lot when they're happy or eat a lot when they're sad, or don't eat at all when they're sad. So we want to look at all of these things because even in our small children, if they're feeling really sad that day or they are very upset about something that happened, you may notice that they're eating less that day, or you may notice that they want to eat more that day. And then you can kind of tell that your child may be one who eats depending on their mood. And then their attitudes, belief, and knowledge about food. Our kids we are the first people that they see and they interact with and the ones who teach them about their foods. So we want to make sure that we have a positive attitude about food, that we are kind of educating them about food, even as we're presenting new things, letting them know that fruits and vegetables are good, healthy foods that help you to grow strong and nourish your brain, and that your body needs these nutrients to continue to grow. That was a big thing for my son. He never wanted to eat green vegetables, but he wound up loving zucchini and green beans. And the big thing was that we compared him to the different superheroes. You know, that Batman has to eat his green vegetables in order to be able to go out and help save people. You know, if Superman didn't eat his vegetables, he wouldn't be able to fly. So these were different ways that we kind of took the different foods, taught him how they are important and why they're important to eat, but also did it in a way that it resonated with him. So how we can work on expanding your child's diet and getting them to try new foods is through shaping. And shaping is a procedure where we basically are changing a behavior by breaking it down into smaller target behaviors. So we're taking this one big behavior of trying a new food and we're going to break it down into smaller pieces. And the way that we can do that is through visuals. That's the biggest way that I use when I train on how to shape a behavior. Here I have what we call the food game. And basically what it does is it shows you a visual way of how to try new foods. When we want our child to try a new food, we don't want to just hand it to them and tell them that we want them to taste this or let's eat this. If you know that your child is resistant to things, that's just going to put more pressure on them, and it's more likely that they are not going to want to try the food. So through using the food game, all these circles at the bottom of each picture is where I would put a token. You can use a marker to do a check mark or anything like that, but we go through very specific steps in teaching how to taste a new food. The first step is to look at the food. At this point, we will literally just have, and sometimes they use a placemat that has a circle that is designated for where the new food sits. So it lets them know that the food is just going to sit there. You don't have to do anything with it. You don't have to eat it. We're just going to let it sit there and we're going to look at it. And we're going to that's where you want to start. You want to start with having them be able to tolerate looking at a new food. After they're able to look at it, then you're going to want them to smell the new food. Let's just see what it smells like. Again, you don't have to eat it. We're just looking at it and we're going to smell it. And each time they're successful in one of these steps, you give them a check. Now, if you have a child where it's going to be a very long process of teaching them to try a new food, then you're going to want to reward them after they are able to do each step. So your reward is typically going to be a more preferred food. So if your kid loves cookies, you might either want to get a bag of the mini cookies or you might want to break your cookies up. And each time that they are able to sit and look at the item, you'll go ahead and give them a small piece of cookie and you'll tell them, we're going to look at this strawberry for 10 seconds. You let them look at that strawberry. If they make it to 10 seconds, great, they just got their check. Now, if you know that that's all your child is going to be able to tolerate at that point, then you can end it and we'll start at the next time, we'll do another session and we're going to shape it up. So next time we're going to look at the strawberry for 10 seconds and then we're going to smell it. They look at it, they smell it, they get their checks. Great job. You can get your reinforcer. Now we've got to the third step. So now next time they're going to look at it, they're going to smell it, and they're going to touch it. So the main thing about this game is we are working on all sensory, all 5 senses. We're going to work on looking at it, smelling it, touching it. Now they've felt it. They know what it feels like. Next thing, we're going to hold it. We're actually going to take it out of the bowl or off of the plate that it's sitting on, and we're just going to hold it in our hand. Again, we're still not asking them to eat it. So the thing to remember is that it could take a while to shape eating new foods. This is not going to happen overnight. For some kids, it's going to happen quicker than for others. But again, we just have to go with our child, what they're comfortable with and their learning. So after they have successfully been able to look at it, smell it, touch it, and hold it, next we're going to lick it. So again, it's not going fully in our mouth. We're just going to lick it and get a taste of it. See what it see what it's all about. See if we can just start to get it towards where we're actually going to eat it. This is where a lot of times you start to get more of the resistance, because now we're actually asking you to put it in your mouth. So after they lick it, the next part is to just have them sit it in their mouth. It can just sit on their tongue. They don't have to chew it, swallow it, none of that. It'll just sit in their mouth. And typically I'll say, we're just going to hold it in our mouth. Again, depending on your learner, we might just hold it for 1 second. We might be able to hold it for 2 seconds. I try to get up to 5 seconds, because that gives them a chance to kind of hold it there, feel it, maybe even start to get a taste of it. And then our final step is that we're going to bite it. So once we bite it, we're going to encourage them to chew and swallow. I have not put those as steps on here because, one, it's very hard to show a visual of somebody chewing and swallowing an item. And two, the other part is that we want to teach our kids that when we're eating, that is part of eating. So when you bite, the next steps are you swallow it. You chew and you swallow. And then, so once you're able to get to this last part, you're going to be using the whole board. So again, you might have to start off with just doing one step at a time. But as you grow and they get more confident with it, you can do more steps. When you're picking the foods that you want your kid to try, you should make sure that you are starting with a food that they are kind of familiar with, or that they might already like to eat. So if you know that your kid really likes cheese, but they don't eat crackers, you might want to start with them having maybe a different type of cheese. And then, so if they eat cheddar cheese, you might then try to get them to eat white cheddar cheese. It's the same thing, but it looks different. And then from cheese, you might go to a Cheez-It. So now this is still the same shape of the cheese. It's kind of the same color, but the texture is different. And then from there, you're going to go to maybe a white cheddar Cheez-It. And you're just going to shape it that way. So even if you have a kid who maybe is just really into fruits, then you can start there. If they already eat strawberries or blueberries or grapes, you're going to want to start with something that's still within that same family as far as texture and consistency goes, because you know that they can tolerate those different things. You know that they're able to chew them, they're able to swallow them. So make sure that you're looking at what it is that they already eat as you're looking at what it is that you want them to expand to eating. The other part is to always make sure that when they're trying a new food, you always have a preferred item for them to have at the end. Again, you want to motivate them to do this. You want to show them that this is a fun thing and that there is a purpose to this. So they're going to get their fun thing at the end. A lot of times I use fruit snacks. Most kids I know love fruit snacks, and it's easy to just give one of those at a time. So things to avoid when you're working on expanding your child's diet: you don't want to pressure them during meal times. You don't want to keep telling, oh, just one more bite, just one more bite. We don't want to put pressure on food. If they say that they're full, we might just want to let them go. And if we know that they're not full and that they're going to come back again for another meal, that's okay when we're first starting off. You also don't want to force a child to try a new food. If you know that your child does not like trying new foods, even though it might seem like an irrational fear to us, a lot of children do not try new foods because they are afraid of the way it will taste. They are afraid of the way it might feel in their mouth. So we have to remember that most of the time this is a true fear for them. So we want to make sure that we're not pressuring them and making this an even scarier experience than what they might already be feeling. We want to let our child, letting your child snack continuously, you want to avoid. Grazing, if you allow your child to graze on preferred foods all day instead of sitting down for planned meals, then what's going to happen is you're having that, they're basically getting full on their preferred foods and they're having free access to it all the time. So there's no need for them to try another meal or to try a different food because they've been able to have what they want and to fill up on it all day long. So they don't see the need in having to sit down to try anything new. You don't want to continue to serve the same exact food every day. I had a child who actually did not have food issues. He actually would eat almost anything you presented to him. But once he started eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, his mom was very excited about this and would send him a peanut butter and jelly sandwich to school every single day. After about a week and a half of this, we started seeing behaviors at lunch where he would throw his sandwich on the floor. He would refuse to eat the sandwich. And it wasn't necessarily that he was refusing food, but he was oversatiated with that sandwich. He had had that sandwich so many times, he did not want it anymore. He wanted something different. And again, he was not able to fully verbally communicate that at that time. So we want to make sure that we are also offering our children ways to communicate what they might be wanting to eat if they are not fully verbal or if they need some assistance in that area. We should avoid serving only new foods at dinner without a balance of safe foods. If they come and sit at the table and see only foods that they don't eat, you are more likely to see a behavior occur. You are more likely to see them refuse the food, avoid going to the table. That might be when you start seeing plates be pushed away or swiped at. And you also, when you're eating, you always want to make sure there's a safe food, something that they know that they like. Because again, if you're going to try to have them try something, there's no guarantee that they're going to like it, but you want to reward them for at least trying it. So you want to make sure that there is a safe option available for them. And then you want to avoid letting them decide exactly what it is for dinner. When my child was younger, I would always cook 2 separate meals. I would cook what I was making for dinner, and if I knew that he wasn't going to want to try it or he didn't like it, then I would cook him a meal as well. But it was more typically that he wasn't going to try it, and I was afraid that he would starve himself, basically. So I would always make him another meal. And so when we went to the doctor, I talked to her about this, and I talked to her about how he didn't really want to try new foods. I was cooking 2 meals every day for dinner, and it was just becoming a lot. And she looked at me, and I will never forget, she looked at me and she said, "You don't make 2 meals. You make 1 meal for dinner. And if he wants to eat, then he'll eat that. And if not, he will not starve himself." And so from that point on, I started making 1 meal for dinner. I know that my child will not eat salmon. So if I make salmon, that is the day that he gets to choose something different to eat. But I started making 1 meal for dinner. And once he started realizing that his choice was to have this for dinner and he could have dessert after, or there was nothing to eat at that point, he started trying foods. He started sitting down. And if he sat down and he tried that meal and he just really found it disgusting and did not want it, that is when I would provide him with a different choice. But you don't want to give them full control in what's going to be served. So what we can do to try to increase eating and comfortability around food are sex-specific meal times. I know it's hard to stick to a strict schedule, but just so that they know, we eat breakfast between maybe 9 and 10. We eat dinner between 5 and 6 or 6 and 7. And just letting them know that those meals are always going to be available between those times. Lunch is going to be between 12 and 1. Letting them know specific areas where we eat. We eat our food at the table. Maybe you have 2 dining tables. Maybe there's a kitchen one, and maybe there's one in a dining room, or you have counter space. It doesn't matter. You just let them know that these are the designated areas for eating. Again, this will help to cut down on the amount of grazing that is happening. You allow for choices within the meal. So although they are not able to choose the whole meal, if you know that you are having them try something new for dinner tonight, if you know that your child does not eat anything but chicken nuggets, but today you're going to try chicken tenders, you are going to ask them what side they want maybe, or what drink they want. You're going to give them a choice in the meal so that you know that there is a specific safe food that is on that plate and available for them, so that they are more likely to sit at the table with that meal. Having them help to prepare the food is another great way. It's exposing them to the food, whether it's something that they already eat or whether it's something new. This is still exposure to food. It's showing them how to prepare their food. It can help with them learning independent skills such as making their own snacks, making their own sandwiches, these different skills that they're going to need as they grow up. So depending on the age of your child and the level of your learner, having them help you with the food is a great step to take. Looking at your own eating habits and altering your eating habits. If you know that you want your child to, I was a big soda drinker. I did not want my child drinking soda. I had to alter my habits by I do not buy soda to keep in the house anymore. We only have soda when we go out to eat. So he knows that when he comes home, soda is no longer available. There is water, there is juice for him, Gatorade, but altering your eating habits to be closer to what you would like your child to eat. That doesn't mean cutting out everything that you love or anything like that. It just means increasing what you would like to see your child eat. If you're going to have them try it, you should be trying it as well. Even if it's something that you already love, you're going to sit with them and you're going to act like we're in this together. So as you're trying this new food, I'm trying this new food too. I'm going to look at it. Oh, I'm going to smell it. Oh, it smells, delicious. I'm going to touch it. It feels soft. It feels hard. Describe these different things as you're looking at them, as you're touching them, as you're tasting them, and kind of give them that language that goes around food to let them know how they can describe if they are liking something, if they are disliking it. And if they're disliking it, trying to help them describe what it is about that food that they dislike. Because if it is a texture thing, then moving forward, okay, well then maybe for the next couple of new foods that we try, we're going to try something crunchy because they don't like soft foods, or vice versa. And increasing engagement during meal times. Try to avoid maybe keeping the tablets out or the TVs on, and try to engage them during mealtime. Try to engage them in talking about the food, talking about the meal that you're having. This is a great time to work on those different descriptive words that can help when it comes to finding different foods that your child will and will not eat. Food time can be a very difficult time for a lot of kids. So what we want to make sure we're doing is making sure that they always feel comfortable during these times, making sure that they're able to access ways to communicate with us exactly what it is that they like, what it is that they don't like, why they may not like this, and just making food a fun thing. Sometimes if you have a learner who is very curious, you might be able to pull out 3 or 4 or 5 different items and let them choose what it is that they're going to try today. Or tell them that, this is a fun game. Maybe you put the different items under different colored cups. You pick what color cup do you want? The red cup? Okay, under the red cup, we have a Cheez-It. That's what you're going to try today. So just making it a really fun learning time. Because again, even though it might not seem like a realistic fear to us, a lot of times the avoidance of food is an actual fear. A lot of times it is an actual, it is a sensory thing that is happening. It is that the smell is too strong. It is that we don't like the way that it looks. I know that I, even as an adult, sometimes will not try a new food because I do not like the way that it looks. I know that that is not always the best thing, but it is real. And that is the same way that our kids are. They are just little humans as well. So just make sure that the first thing you look at, if you have a picky eater or you have a self-limited eater, you want to make sure first and foremost that there are no health factors that are causing these different issues. A lot of times, like we talked about, the communication is not always there. So if you see some of these other physical signs, the gagging, the constant coughing, choking, hoarding food in their jaw, it's always falling out of their mouth as they're eating. And it's not that they're spitting it out, but it is literally just falling out of their mouth as they're trying to chew. Those are all oral motor things. And so you want to talk to your doctor. You might want to talk to an OT or speech and kind of see what it is that you can do to work on strengthening those muscles. Sometimes it is going to be that you're going to have to alter their diet to specific types of food textures to work on building those muscles. Sometimes they can give you different exercises that you can do to help train those muscles to grow. But it's very important that you rule out any medical causes before you just decide that your child is a picky eater. Using visuals, again, is a great way I have that food game and I can make it available for you all if anybody would like it. You can also make it yourself and you can alter it the way you need it. For some kids, you might not be able to show the whole board. You might need to make them into certain cards and then you just work on one card at a time. And that's fine because, again, we're going to work at their pace because we don't want to force anything or put any pressure on them to make food an unenjoyable experience. Making sure that there are clear expectations around food. I know growing up, I used to eat fast and I was an overeater because I was always told that I was supposed to clean my plate. I had to eat everything that was on my plate. And as an adult, one, I have learned portion control. You know, as a child, my parents were the ones who would make my plate. So whether it was too much or not, I was expected to eat it all. But as an adult, I know portion control, but I also know for my child, I tend to give him smaller portions and let him know that there's always more available. If you're still hungry, there's more available. I would rather give him a small amount to let him try, see if he likes it, if he gets full, and give more, than to give him a large plate and set this huge expectation on him that he must eat everything that's presented. Because for some kids, that can be a very daunting expectation. And so we don't want to put that kind of pressure on them. And again, you might want to keep a running list of what is a preferred item for your child and what is non-preferred, even a list of what they just absolutely refuse to touch, what they might look at and instantly gag or instantly push away, because you might find some commonalities or consistencies in those different foods that could also show you. I had a kid who only ate orange colored foods for a while. And that was very interesting. He chose orange as his favorite color, and he decided that he was only going to eat things that were orange, but not only orange, they had to be crunchy. So he was basically eating carrots and Cheetos, and that was about it. And he drank Sprite. That was it, all he would do. And so when we started expanding his diet, we started with sour cream and cheddar chips. Those are orange. Cheez-Its, those are orange. An actual piece of cheese, that's orange. Now we're going to put this cheese on a regular cracker. The cracker is not orange. And so that's where we had to start, was just using what it is that he was already eating and already motivated by and shaping it out that way. And again, this can be a long process. It could take a week or two to train a new food. So it's going to be hard. Patience is key. And making sure, again, that everybody's having fun in this. This can be a fun experience for you and for your child, especially if you do it as a game. I think that's the best way to kind of get them engaged and get them feeling comfortable. And you want to make sure also that as you're training new foods, whoever it is, whether it's you, whether it's a therapist, you want to make sure that it's a familiar person, somebody that they feel comfortable with, because if they don't feel comfortable with them, they're not going to trust to start trying new things with them as well. So that is very important. And we want to make sure that we're trying to just give our children a balanced diet, because we know that nutrition is very important for development, and educating them on that. There's plenty of little kid videos out there that talk about different diets, and you can really just look it up on YouTube. Like fun eating videos, fun food songs, and they'll go over different vegetables, different fruits, how they make your brain strong, how they make your arms strong. And these are good ways to teach kids, because every kid is always like, I'm going to be strong, you know, I'm going to be smart. And they are, they're going to be smart, strong individuals, but it's up to us to teach them those first steps to becoming those individuals. So, is there anybody that has any questions on anything I presented today or any of the information? Okay, next week is a mini conference through Partners in Learning. So I hope you guys signed up. On Tuesday of next week at 3:00, I will be presenting on replacement behaviors. Hi, Anna. When you say what do you suggest for a 10-month-old, could you be a little bit more specific as to maybe what it is that you are seeing happen? Hi, Annette. Thank you for joining today. I can definitely send you over that PowerPoint once this is done. Okay, so Anna, to talk about what you're talking about, as far as introducing new foods, I would tend to start with the more pureed foods because their palates are so small and their jaws are just growing. I would also look at how strong their jaws are. Sometimes you can tell this when they're sucking on their bottles, and even talking to your doctor about this as well. As long as they are developing on time, as of right now, I would say you can try foods that were pureed. That's normally the easiest way to start, and then to start introducing smaller chunks. And if you start to maybe like diced up fruit or something like that, you're going to want to start in very small pieces, again, to avoid choking. Because once, especially with them being so young, that's where some of that fear can set in. If they try something and maybe it was too big and they start to choke, that's where that fear can start at such a young age. So it's going to be important to make sure that we're giving them sizes, little bite sizes that are proportional to what they can hold in their mouth. And again, even if you're doing chunks, I would do softer foods, things that they can mush up with their gums and their tongue, that are not going to really flake off in their throat or anything like that. But I typically go from pureed to small chunks, and sometimes you might even mix the chunk in with the puree if you know that they like that. As far as within school versus home, if you are teaching this with a visual at home, I would make sure that you send that same visual to school and that you have a conversation with his teachers or her teachers about what it is that you're doing at home and how you use this visual in the home. Again, before you send it to school, it was with any other visual, you're going to want to make sure that it's basically trained at home. And I really would not, unless it's that you're a teacher in the school and you're the one who is helping a child try a new food, I would not have my child try a new food within the school until we've started practicing trying it at home first. I think it's important to make sure that they're trying it at home with you in a comfortable setting before sending it into the community, just because you don't always know what kind of reaction you're going to get. And so you want to make sure that you've kind of been able to look at it and see what's going on before you send it somewhere else. And again, it's going to also depend on what kind of setting they're in school. If there is an extra teacher that's available to maybe sit with them while they do these foods, then that's a whole nother thing. If they have somebody that can sit with them, that is awesome. And that is a great way to work on foods. And you could have them do this not only at lunchtime. I would say to have them do this during a snack time, with a smaller amount of food. So as far as school goes, I would just make sure that there's that visual, that there is a conversation between families and the teacher to make sure everybody's on the same page. I have seen sometimes in schools where it does seem that maybe they're pushed a little harder to try things. So just making sure that we explain to them at the school as well that we do not want to place too much pressure on this. If they're not willing to try it at school, I would say just let them present it daily. Once you present it, if they are completely still refusing it, you try again later, but not to pressure them into using it. Okay, so this question says, what would you do with a child that will only eat whole items of food, like a whole pancake with his fingers, but will not eat cut up pancakes on his own and has to have people feed him? He also has to have 2 items in his hand at a time. May I ask how old is this child? And I only ask that because for smaller children, 2 and 3, 1 through 3, that area, it's not too concerning if they 20 months. Okay. So being that they're 20 months old, I'm not too concerned that they want to be fed. But what I would do is I would have that whole pancake present, and I would let them have that whole pancake that they can eat from. But I would also still keep a small piece, the same way that we looked at that food game. You can still do it with them the same way. You can just show them the pancake on the fork. You can put it closer to their face, and just shape it that way. And you might have to start with a very small piece of pancake. And you might have to start with, and once they're able to take that one piece of pancake, then you can start cutting from their whole pancake and taking pieces from there. But for now, I would have that whole pancake still in front of them, and I would present a small piece of pancake on the side for them to eat. Will they eat at all on their own with their hands? Or do they just want you to strictly feed them? Okay. So then also there, I would I would leave the food in front of them and have them, if we know that they can eat with their hands and they're capable, I would start shaping myself out of the picture as far as feeding them goes. So I might feed them the first 5 bites, and then I'm going to back away, and it's up to them to eat the rest of it. And you are going to see some behavior. Parent feeds them. Okay. So it says parents feed them with a fork while grazing at dinner. Again, we want to avoid grazing. So that might be the first step in the whole situation, is starting to shape an actual time and place for food. When a child is a grazer, it is harder to be able to teach the appropriate ways of eating and to be able to shape their eating procedures if they're constantly able to move around. So the first step might actually be having the parents feed them only while sitting at the table. I've had that before, where I have a child who is a grazer, and we've had to work on, okay, sit first, and then we give them the food. And if they get up, so this is for a child who fed themselves, but if they got up with the food, we would remove the food and place it back on the table, and then he would come back and sit down to have the food again to eat. So that's going to be one big part right there, is just making sure that he is actually in a specific area when eating. Because if he's grazing and he's expecting that he can just come and go for the food as he wants, that's what he's going to continue to do. And being that he's 20 months old, this is a great time to start shaping that, because he is still very small, and we can still work on a lot of these behaviors that are kind of prerequisite behaviors. So once the parents are able to shape him to a table or a chair, a high chair, whatever they decide, that's when I would then start to shape them from feeding. So now he's sitting at a table. Now mom or dad can give him the 5 bites from the fork, but now I'm going to move myself away, and he's going to eat him for the rest. He's going to feed himself the rest. So then from there, if he's starting to feed himself, that's when I would start with, okay, now he can feed himself the whole pancake. I'm assuming he would want to pick it up and bite it if he won't take small pieces. So from there, that's when I would give him his one full pancake and a piece of pancake on the side. And that's how we're going to do that. So maybe, it starts off with him just tolerating that piece of pancake there, and it's eventually going to end up to where he's going to have to eat that small piece of pancake before he can access the full pancake. And from there, you can start cutting into his pancake. Does that make sense? I'm sorry, I know that was a lot of information. And again, if anybody wants to email me or has any follow-up questions where I can break something down a little further from you, or maybe write it down so it's not so much of my talking, please feel free to reach out. I have no problem with helping out where I can. And did I get everybody's question? Is there anybody else that has any questions? Thank you guys so much for joining me. I have enjoyed being able to do these. I look forward to the next one. Again, my next one will be next Tuesday at 3:00, and I will be talking about replacement behaviors. So I hope to see you guys there. Let me see, in a class with several kids that don't eat. So I have actually done this with the class, and we did what was called like a food adventure time almost. In the same game that I used, the food game, everybody had their own visual, and we all would try the same new food. So it was a game that we all did together. And we made it kind of like a mystery thing. And we would even give choices at the beginning of the week. These are our choices. What food would we like to try this week? And we would let the kids vote on them. And this worked even in a preschool classroom, letting them vote on which one they wanted. And that was the food that we're going to try. So we'll take that food and we're cutting it up. And every day we had 2 times a day, right before snack, that we sat down and we all together as a class would try this new food, and we would do the same step. Today, we're all looking at our new food. And obviously we did have some who would not cooperate, or maybe some who were on the looking phase longer than the touching phase. But it did, once you started having 1 or 2 that would try, you kind of got to use them as models, and the other peers were a little bit more motivated to try as well. And everybody, yes, like a food party basically. And everybody at the end got a fruit snack. So that was a fun way because it engaged everybody. And then once you had one person who tried, you know, there might be somebody who like, oh, that was my best friend who tried, now I'm going to try it. And whether they liked it or not, it definitely helped to desensitize a little bit from the pressure of food. And they started having more fun with it than actually dreading the fact that we were bringing in a new food for them to try. No problem. Is there anybody else that has any questions? All right. Thank you guys so much again for joining me. I look forward to talking to you guys again next week. This video will be uploaded to Partners in Learning YouTube page if anybody would like to watch it again. But thank you again for joining, and I look forward to talking to you guys next time. I hope you all have a great day. Thank you so much.